Welcome to Religion, Sex, and Politics, your place to talk about the three things we're not supposed to talk about. If you haven't already, subscribe and ring the bell. And if you like our content, help out the channel by sharing this video with others. Today is April 28th, 2022, and welcome to this edition of the news that the news won't tell you. First up, we've heard so much in the news about how badly Russia is doing in the war. They suffered a massive defeat around Kiev and in retaliation committed heinous war crimes, not only in a northern suburb of Kiev, but also at a train station in the Donbass region. But here's what the news won't tell you. The Russian force that attacked in the direction of Kiev was never meant to capture the city. In fact, the city is home to nearly 3 million Ukrainians and was defended by over 100,000 soldiers. Any serious attack on Kiev would have required a vast Russian army. So how big was the army that Russia sent? Estimates are as low as 30 to 40,000 troops, a number far too low to mount any meaningful attack on the city. So why did the Russians attack? The answer is simple. Russia was shaping the battlefield by staging a diversion that would keep Ukraine's army concentrated on Kiev while the real battle took place hundreds of miles to the east in the Donbass. What's more, Russia used Ukraine's media power against itself by staging a highly publicized military column driving towards Kiev, which caused such a freakout that Ukraine had to reinforce Kiev with troops and supplies that needed to be sent eastward. This diversion has set the stage for Phase 2 of the war, the phase in which Russia will annihilate Ukraine's best trained and best equipped army currently dug in along the contact line in the Donbass. And as to war crimes, what the media won't tell you is that it seems highly likely that the most publicized crimes were actually committed by Ukrainian forces themselves. The missile strike on the train station, for example, was initially said to be the result of a Russian airstrike against civilians. Italian journalists on the ground, however, not only showed the world the remains of a missile used only by the Ukrainian army, but they also inadvertently videotaped the serial number printed on the missile. This serial number appears to be in the inventory of the Ukrainian military. Have you noticed how this story fell off the news radar lately? Well, now you know why. The train station attack wasn't a Russian war crime. It was a Ukrainian war crime. But of course, that's news that the news won't tell you. You might have heard in the news about upwards of 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers defending a steel factory in Mariupol. Daily comparisons are made to the Alamo and Thermopylae. But what the news won't tell you is that these comparisons make zero sense. The Spartans at Thermopylae fought to hold off a vast Persian army, buying time for their Greek compatriots elsewhere. The Russians, however, have withdrawn the bulk of their forces from Mariupol and redeployed them for offensive actions in the Donbass. The Ukrainian remnants in the steel factory offer no military advantage to their compatriots. And as to the Alamo, the soldiers fought to the death because the Mexicans planned to execute anyone captured alive. They had no choice but to go on and fight to the death. The situation is vastly different in Mariupol. What the news won't tell you is that Russia has buses parked in the perimeter of the steel factory, ready to load up any Ukrainian soldiers and immediately drive them across the battle lines and back to the Ukrainian army. So why won't they surrender? Well, once again, what the news won't tell you is that there is someone or something inside that steel factory that the Ukrainians don't want in the hands of the Russians. And that's the great mystery at the heart of the Mariupol steel factory that the news just won't tell you. You might not be hearing about it on the news, but it appears Ukraine might open up a second front in the war with a coming invasion of Moldova. Moldova is a former Soviet holding that is now independent, but home to a significant number of ethnic Russians living in an area of Moldova known as Transnistria. Like the Donbass region of Ukraine, Transnistria is home to many who would like to break away from the rest of the country. Russia currently has peacekeepers in Moldova, helping keep tensions from boiling over. But what the news won't tell you is that inside Transnistria is Europe's largest weapons depot, filled with Soviet-era weapons and ammunition. Now, the news wants us to think that Ukraine is winning the war and that all the weapons, ammunition, and fuel supplies flooding Ukraine is turning the country into a quagmire for Russia. But what the news won't tell you is that Russia is destroying a week's worth of Ukrainian weapons, ammunition, and fuel each and every day. What's worse, Ukraine uses Soviet-era 152mm artillery shells, while NATO uses and produces the slightly larger 155mm artillery shells. And as the Soviet-era shells are running out, the weapons depot in Transnistria becomes more and more attractive. Any Ukrainian invasion of Moldova, however, will widen the war and bring us one step closer to World War III. But that's something the news will never tell you. Thanks for joining us in this video, and we look forward to seeing you in our next edition of The News That the News Won't Tell You.